And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 4, episode 19. And it's the time of year where we're starting to look for cool stories in Division 3. And I think we have one that we're going to highlight and spotlight on the QCast today. And that is the story of Bard College. Bard College is 7-1 on the season and 3-0 in the Liberty League. And I thought it was a good time to talk to head coach Dave Sloan of Bard College. And Dave, we're going to get into this, but boy, you haven't been there that long. I mean, you've got 7 wins and you just showed up. You just
Yep.
moved your stuff in about August or September, didn't you, Dave? Well, it's
Yeah.
great to see you, by the way.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and it's been a whirlwind. Getting the job and moving up in August. A late time frame for most hires. But it actually it kind of worked. We just hit the ground running.
We're going to get into kind of the awesome season that's underway and the turnaround that's happening and all that stuff. But I'm always interested in how coaches move from one job to the next. And you were an assistant at Carnegie Mellon in the UAA, and you were part of some really good teams there, including last year's team. Up until the very end, Carnegie Mellon was in that Pool C conversation. All the
Yep.
games up until the very end mattered in a really loaded UAA. Talk a little bit. How did things play out here? Because this job, I mean, you got the job in August. So take us
Mhm.
through the end of the Carnegie Mellon season and then leading up to how does this job come about at Bard?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest benefit I had was I mean, you mentioned my time at CMU, and I was there 5 years, and it flew. Hard to believe it was 5 years, but I mean, awesome time. Obviously, the UAA is super competitive, great guys, and when you mentioned it, last season was awesome.
Yeah.
Aside from the last few games that we had and let it slip, but I mean the way that the guys really kind of built over my 5 years and where they took the program. I mean, that's why I'm sitting here with Bard today. And so the benefit, I mean, talking about how it came about, working for a guy like Tony Wingen, who's been there for 33 years now,
Yeah.
and I mean, I learned so much from him, but also was really supported. And so during the process, I felt I was ready to look for that next step, and he supported me the whole way. And so, just things came up. I was able to get involved in the process. Took a little bit longer than I think they had expected, and so I was, a little surprised with the timing. But coach supported me, and really it was timing doesn't really matter. Let's take advantage of the opportunity and see what happens.
And of course, the job was vacated by Mike Lenahan, who was there a couple years. He went to Willamette, so he went back to the West Coast. So now he's in the Northwest Conference again. And for those that don't know, Bard College is would you call it in the Hudson Valley of New
Mhm.
York, Coach? Is that
Yep.
I believe that you're right
Yep. So we're
located right
we're
along the
pretty
river.
much right between Poughkeepsie and Albany, right along the Hudson River.
Gotcha. So you go from Carnegie Mellon, and was I know in coaching that it's kind of like any job that comes open is just a gold mine, right? It's whatever the
Mhm.
situation, it is an unbelievable opportunity. How did you decide to pursue the bar job when it opened? Like, where'd you see it, and then what made you say
Mhm.
like I'm all in on this?
Yeah, it's kind of the same that we talk about when we're talking to kids about evaluating schools, right? I think you've got to evaluate a job in the same manner. And so, looking at it, obviously the chance to become a head coach and from a basketball perspective, an opportunity to build, right? That's something that really excited me. But then the other piece that's really important and something that I've been lucky enough to have in my stops coaching at the college level was I was at a school that had a degree that mattered, right? I didn't have to convince people why the degree that we offered helped them. It was simply, here's the facts, here's the outcomes. Do you like it or not?
Yeah.
Right. And so that the degree that we offer at Bard, the way that our curriculum is set up, we're very different. We're a very strong liberal arts school, but it's very discussion based. Class sizes of 10 kids.
Sure.
It's not a lot of lectures. There, you really kind of create your own majors and paths, and so it's a very different curriculum. But it's one that, we don't have to explain why the degree matters. We have a ton of data and job outcomes and
Right.
alumni and all of that that proves what it creates. And so for me, I saw an opportunity to build something, but also having an opportunity in an environment where it matters, right? And our kids
Right.
get what they go to school for. And then obviously from a personal standpoint, I loved CMU and I love Pittsburgh, but I am not a city guy. And so getting, the first time I came up to campus, and I mean, being able to drive across the bridge, Hudson River, you see the Catskill Mountains in the background. You're walking, I mean, our campus, we have hiking trails on it. We have about 1,000
Right.
acres. I mean, it's just been, it's an awesome place.
I YouTubed. I was watching the campus tour on YouTube earlier today in preparation for this, and it is a beautiful campus
Hey,
in a
not
beautiful
many
setting.
campuses have fully functioning farms, and
Right.
along with a world-renowned, art program and drama and music, and I mean, it's a really cool blend. And quite frankly, one that not a lot of people know about. I didn't know about it until, I started looking into the job and got to campus.
The turnaround's pretty impressive, and I want to ask you kind of what's going well right now, because the last three seasons, the last three completed seasons. So I'm going to take out the COVID season, of course, which there was, I don't think Bard played, but last year the team won 7 games. In 21-22, the team won 8 games, and in 19-20, the team was 0-24.
Mhm.
So to be sitting here at 7-1 and 3-0 in the Liberty League, you're tied with Hobart at 3-0.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a big deal. Like when you think of a program that's going from 0 wins 3 seasons ago to 7 wins before Christmas. Dave, what can you put your finger on? Like we're going to talk about your guys and we'll get into each one of them, but what's going well so far?
Really, and this is one of the hardest parts about a new coach, right? You just don't know what to expect. The way that we're playing this year is very different from how they've played in the past, and so you just never really know. Are the guys going to like it, not like it? Are they going to buy in? We have 8 seniors or grads out of 13 guys on the roster, right? So it's a lot of guys that are at the tail end of their
Sure.
career. I'm the third coach that a couple of them have played for, and so I just wasn't really sure what to expect. And thankfully, the new compliance rules allowed us to get on the floor, early with the guys.
Yeah.
And from day one, I mean, the guys bought in. They embraced a new way of doing things, new philosophies, new schemes, all of that. And I mean, it was incredible to watch. I mean, we practiced once a week, and by the third practice, guys are holding each other accountable to new terminology and new, things that countered what they, habits that they had the last couple of years. And so it just was really cool to see that buy-in. And quite frankly, I think that's where we're succeeding, is because they wanted, and we're open for a new way of doing things. If they would have pushed back at all, with that stuff, it would have made it hard.
Right. And I was looking at your season box score, trying to get a feel for like what kind of style are you playing. And the cool thing is you're really excelling on both ends of the floor right now.
Mhm.
You're shooting 49% from the field. Your opponents are shooting 37%.
Mhm.
You're scoring 69. You're holding opponents to 62. You have a rebound margin of +5 per game. So like across the board at every kind of meat and potatoes type
Mhm.
statistic, you guys are you guys are playing really, really well right now. From an X's and O's standpoint, how do you, is it a different scheme? Are you running a different offense? Are you playing a different defense? Like, is there something that's new to these guys from what they were doing a year ago?
Yeah, before it was a lot based in the press and very defensive focused. And quite frankly, that's why our numbers are defensively are where they're at, right? I mean, they just spent a couple years playing a lot of defense. And even though the scheme looks a little differently, like they had a ton of reps. They build a ton of habits that have really helped kind of carry over. So for me, it's been a lot more focus on the offensive end, a lot more movement, player movement, ball movement, really trying to create space and play
Sure.
through off ball actions a lot more than playing, on the ball or just a high ball screen and play, right? We want to move the ball. We want all 5 guys to be threats. And that's where you're seeing, we tend to have a different leading score, it seems like, every night. And that's something that we've really talked about. We have the ability to do it, but that's something within the scheme and within the way we want to play. It's really trying to highlight that
Sure.
opportunity where we're we're not going to let teams just load up on one or two guys, because we have other guys, and we play in a way that more guys, when they see an opportunity and it's their night or their matchup, they're taking it.
Just curious, it's clear that from what you mentioned that the team, your guys have bought into the style that you're playing. And I got to give them a lot of credit for that. And I'm curious how it was when you first got there, because you're the third coach for the seniors, right? The oldest guys have had, you're the third head coach at Bard that they have had. I think that must be incredibly difficult. I think that must be hard on kids. And you get there in August, so you get there, pretty darn late in the grand
Yep.
scheme of things. So when you get the guys together for the first time, whenever that was, I assume it was in August, somewhere in
Mhm.
there, right? Like right away, you probably went to campus, met with guys. What what was it? Do you think? What was the connection? What were the guys welcoming? Were they skeptical at
Mhm.
first? What did you get a sense right away that they were welcoming to a new way of doing things?
Absolutely. And when I got the job, the first thing, I called every player individually and just wanted to talk to them and ask them a couple questions. And to me, talking to them in an individual, kind of environment, I felt like I could get some better answers. Right? There wasn't the group
Sure.
think. There wasn't relying on one or two people to speak. I mean, everybody had to put thoughts together, and so I just plainly asked them, not only, hey, here's what we're thinking, and here, but it was, what do you really like, right? What's going really well in the program? What do you want me to keep? And then where
Sure.
are areas that we can improve? And we talked a little bit about kind of the overall philosophy of the way I see the game and the way that I, kind of what I wanted to bring. But we didn't talk specifics, because I wanted to get the input from them on, okay, let's make sure we continue doing this or find these areas, but also, here's the areas the guys are saying can really improve, and let's try and find a way to attack those. But then I ask, and there were two things that really stood out to me. One, I asked everybody's goals, and they all were in line. And so that to me showed, hey, we've got a team that wants to buy in, that wants to come together to reach, what they talked about. But the second thing was, every single player, from our grad student all the way down to our first years coming in, when I asked them one of the things that they felt was the strongest about the program, every single person talked about the locker room, and they talked about the guys with them. And I know everybody in America talks about how great their guys are and how much they love each other, right? But to me, having a chance to talk to individual players and hearing that come out of their mouth first,
Sure.
I knew we had a place to start, right? If they like each other and they're aligned in the goals that they want, that's a darn good foundation to be able to build from. And it shows that they're willing and open to, hey, you tell me what you can do that's going to help me line up these two areas, and let's give it a try.
Your nucleus here that you're playing this year. We'll talk about 4 or 5 of the main
Mhm.
guys. You have a kind of a deep team that you're playing. But were these guys were they all on the roster a year ago? Are any of these guys transfers from anywhere else, or is this generally the same crew that came back?
Yeah, other than our first years, everybody was
That's
here
awesome.
on the roster. Our grad student graduated from Bard. He was out last season with a torn ACL, and so he is a grad, but he was on the team and graduated from Bard. So other than our first year
That's
guys,
cool.
one of which was recruited from the city, and the other is actually he's a first year from Ukraine that kind of got to campus, stopped down, talked to me, and wanted to try out for the team.
That's really cool because, I'm looking at 7 wins last year, or, whatever it was, 7 wins last year and then
Hmm.
7 wins already. And I'm
Hmm.
thinking, did Todd McGinnis get a hold of you and you have like 17 transfers from the NESCAC and stuff? Or like, but
Hmm.
these are the same guys. And so
Yep.
let's talk about them. So Elliot Harris is averaging 14 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. He is a 6'3" senior guard. Let's talk a little bit about Elliot Harris and the season that he's having so far. He's been great.
Well, it's not often that you walk into a program and in the first game of his senior season, he becomes the all-time leader in 3-point
Oh,
shots made. And so, I mean, the first bucket he had on the season, it put him in a league of his own.
wow.
And coming off our game last night, he shot 8 for 12 from three, second all time in terms of threes in a game. I mean, he's just when he gets loose, career almost 40% 3-point shooter. He's been unbelievable. And the biggest thing, it's hard for players like that when teams, scout for him and take away the shot, right?
Yeah.
It's really easy for them to kind of gear it down or maybe force stuff because they're not used to it. And that's been a learning curve for him. But he's really embraced the role of like, hey, if they're going to take me away and give me all this pressure, well, somebody else is going to be open. And so his movement, his willingness to move the ball, try and make plays for other guys, that has, especially in the last, 3 to 4 games, it's really expanded, and it's part of the reason that we remain efficient.
That's one of the cool things about great shooters like that as they get older is that they do start to get all the attention on the perimeter. And then
Yeah.
two things happen is the good ones learn how to pass it. And I think the second thing is that the really great ones end up hitting a bunch of tough shots. So I'm assuming your guy Elliott is not only dishing it a little bit, but he's
Mhm.
probably making some pretty impressive threes out there on the perimeter, I'm guessing, coach.
There is no doubt that he knows the shots he can make, and he's not afraid to take them. And as a shooter, especially one who knows that he's at the top of a scouting report, like you have to have a quick trigger. If it's your shot, you have to be willing to take it because he's not going to get wide open ones,
Right.
right? I mean, no team is going to give them that look, and so you really have to be hunting them and confident in the looks you're going to get. And when he gets hot, he's hard to stop.
Another guy I wanted to ask you is Rowan Heinze, who's let's see, a 6'5" senior forward, 12 points, 6 rebounds per game. I hope I'm saying, I think it looks like Heinze to me. Is it
Mhm.
Heinze? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm 2 for 2. Harrison Heinze. I
Well
can't,
done.
there's a guy coming up that's going to be really tough. So just stay tuned, folks. We're going to need help on that. So Rowan Heinze, 12.6 rebounds. He gives you good size at 6'5". Talk about Heinze.
Yeah, he's a guy that's really progressed and kind of stepped into a bigger role. Has really embraced kind of being a little bit more of a focal point in terms of the movement that we run, and so the ball's in his hands a lot more. He's his biggest mismatch or strength is his skill set. I mean, he was a perimeter player that's really put a lot of work in the weight room, and it's opened up his ability to be a strong five, to finish at the rim, and rebound, but also being able to attack from the elbow, to attack from the top of the key. He's starting to find his shot as of late, and so I mean, he's big in terms of strength. He's not the tallest guy and so he's often a little bit undersized when it comes to the height, but his quickness, his work ethic, and then the skill set to be able to attack guys off the bounce, to pick and pop. I mean, he gives teams a lot of trouble, but he's really stepped into a much larger role. And I think, coming off a week where he was named Performer of the Week, our first Performer of the Week in the Liberty League since 2019, you really can see it start to click for him.
You've got a 6-foot senior guard, and this is where we come to the real tough name here now. He's from Athens,
The-
Greece, south side of Chicago. I grew up with some kids from Greece, a little bit in the neighborhood. I would say Lazaros Panagiotounis. Am I in the neighborhood?
You
Lazaros
you are
Panagiotounis,
you are
close?
very close, and I will tell you, when I got the job, I was very thankful that I'm not the PA announcer for Barth, because it would be yes, I try and avoid some of those. I'm not the best with name pronunciation, so Laz gets on me a little bit about it.
Let's talk about Laz. So 12 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Really impressive stat line so far. 6'0" senior guard. Let's talk about our guy Laz here.
Yeah, it's funny. The last couple games, I mean, he's shooting 40% from three. He's really finding his shot well. He's a fantastic scorer. Very strong, plays bigger than he is. But the last couple games, he's similar to Ellie. It's really been taken away from the three, and he's done a fantastic job of kind of shifting his mindset. Um, Truthfully, a little bit too much. I think he's passing up a few shots that he could take. but he's really transitioning into being that playmaker and a guy who can create off the bounce. And so when we have multiple guards that can do that, but also being able to step back and shoot 40% for three, so you can't go under him and play the
Sure.
drive, and he can pick his spots. He's been a really really big asset, and then he's really advanced as a defender as well. He's very strong, holds his ground really well, taking away the middle, and so he's become a really solid two-way player.
You've got two other guys that I'd like to talk about here. Both are averaging 8 points a game. So Sean Wilcox is a 6'4" junior forward, another guy that gives you a little height. Talk about Sean Wilcox and his 8 points, 5 rebounds a game.
When you look at his stats, you don't quite see the impact that he's made for us. He's our leader in minutes. He has been our anchor defensively. He will guard 1 through 5. Really timely and block shots. He's got good length. He anticipates really well. And the funniest part is, I mean, the defense and kind of being in the right positioning and the IQ and all of that is his strong suit.
Sure.
The offense is coming along, and it's been awesome to watch him really understand, when his shots are coming, the spots that for him to look for. Our New Paltz game, he exploded and had a great, offensive output, and then he kind of, went back to struggling a little bit, but then now all of a sudden he's making 2 out of 3 shots at the end of a game to win it, right? And so he's a guy that it does not matter if he gets 10 shots off or 2 shots off, and it doesn't matter what time of the game it is. When the ball's in his hands, we have utmost confidence that he's going to make the right play. He's going to finish when he needs to, and really, really is a tough guard because of what he gives defensively, right? We can't take him off the floor. The way he switches and his combination of being able to guard on the perimeter and blocking shots as a 4 or a 5, it's incredible.
And that is why he's your minutes leader. He's so valuable on the defensive end in addition to the offensive end.
Yep.
And then Heston Tucker, who's averaging 8.3 rebounds a game, 6'4", senior guard. So, in your lineup, you go 6'5", 6'4", 6'4". Talk about Heston Tucker.
I got to look again. I think he's shooting like 70% at the rim right now.
Wow.
I mean, he's really taken off, and a lot of our conversation with him has just been be simple. I mean, he has incredible physical traits. He's very strong. He knows how to get to a spot, and it's guys can't knock him off when he's on balance, especially getting to the front of the rim. And so when he gets himself in trouble, it's when he's trying to create and be a different type of player, right? The games that he's done really well, and we constantly talk about it. He's a one dribble guy. He's a straight line, find his spots, and it's to the rim and finish, or a step in 3. Like, he's done a really nice job of kind of embracing the simplicity and understanding that our movement and the way that our offense works,
Sure.
if he stays in that role and looks for his spots, he's going to remain very efficient. And I think you see it with the numbers and with his output. He's a guy that he doesn't need many shots to get those eight points or beyond. And so he's really come a long way. And again, I mean, just another guy that you can see it, like, it's really clicking for him. He's excited about it. But again, I think better than anybody, he's embraced his role and really has tried to excel in that role of let's stay really efficient. Let's find my spots. And it's working.
Well, I want to talk about the league a little bit, but first talk a little bit about your background, because as I always say on here, I appreciate the D3 guys, the guys that this is kind of who they are. And you played at Alvernia. And by the way, every time I hear Alvernia, so my alma mater played Alvernia in the 1997 national semifinal game in Salem, Virginia. And I have flashback. We were down like 8. We were down 8, I don't know, somewhere in the second half. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, we're in trouble here. And so I just, every time I hear, I can't remember what the kid's name, is there a Damian Hunter? I don't know. There was some kid who was,
Yes, they had a squad then,
he was
and it's
unbelievable. Yeah, this kid was
yeah.
unbelievable. You played there in 2014, so you were nowhere near this. And talk a little bit about kind of your experience at Alvernia, because the fact that you've stayed all around Division III in your stops, to me says that, like, you had a really positive experience there. What was it like going to Alvernia, playing at Alvernia?
Yeah, the D3 is it, and I think the total experience you get. I mean, I went to school for athletic training. I'm a certified athletic trainer. I worked for 4.5 years in collegiate sports medicine before I became a full-time coach. And so going to school, getting the opportunity to be an AT, getting an opportunity to play for a team that we hung four banners in my 4 years. We had three conference titles,
Wow.
and then an ECAC title in my 4 years. And so, being around a program that was so successful with guys that were just incredible, and playing for Coach Miller, who is the all-time leader in wins at Alvernia. And so the overall experience of the D3 model and kind of my own growth and experiences and all that in a school, the small school, the liberal arts school,
Right.
that's what hooked me. And when I graduated, I worked as a graduate assistant athletic trainer. And so I coached 2 years of high school ball. And, it was, I learned a lot getting to slide into the coach's side, and I love the guys I worked with, but I also learned very quickly I needed to get back into college. And so, getting the stops that I've been at, it's been very different schools, very, different niches, different
Yeah.
types, different locations. But with all the stops that I've had, I've been given the opportunity to do a ton. And I think that's the power of Division 3 is you're not as a coach, you're not, hey, just show up to practice and this
Right.
is all you're doing, right? You have to do so much around campus. You have so much of an impact in terms of the overall experience for your guys. And that to me was the most fun, right? Getting to help them through the 18 to 22 or 23-year-old years, and having a lot of fun along the way.
It's a great point because you mentioned being a grad assistant at your alma mater at Alvernia, and then after your stop at Boyerton Area High School, you coached at Maine Maritime, and
Mhm.
then you were at Carnegie Mellon, which is where you've been the last 4 years. And so, I mean, you're right. You would have an appreciation for the fact that like this isn't like Duke staff, like you have like you might be working like doing stats at the baseball game someday, right? Like it's
Well,
a
it,
totally
it's
different
funny
experience.
that was the best part. When I went to Maine Maritime, we were building a program, and I worked for two different coaches in my 2.5 years there, both in their first head coaching job. And so I got a chance to learn a lot about building a program, a lot about kind of that first job and what it looks like. But I also did a ton. I mean, I worked in the fall and the spring as a full-time athletic trainer, along with
Sure.
coaching in the winter, recruiting in the summer. Man, I did trips for admissions, went to admissions college fairs for them. I mean, it was awesome. And that's the piece where I think you have to do it to get that full appreciation of, the ways that Division 3 models and those,
Right.
especially those small Division 3 schools, the opportunities you have to do more than just coach.
It's a great point. In Division 3, I mean, when you're on a coaching staff of any sport, I mean, you're immersed in the community. And
Yep.
I think at the higher levels that at times, a Division 1 Power 5 coaching staff can just be basketball guys, and that's certainly not what any Division 3 coach is able to do. And then
Well,
which
you
is the
you
great part.
also just have more. You also just have more guys that you can split. The duties that you need to
Right.
to to do. And so, it's not that necessarily they're not doing something that a Division 3 coach has to do. It's
Right.
that they have more guys on staff. So you might
Yeah.
not be asked to do 10 things. You might ask to do three things, but you've got to do those
Great
really
point.
well, right?
Great point.
For us, we have two coaches, and when I was I was the only assistant, and it was like, hey, we have these 15 things to do. Have fun, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so it's hard. You learn a lot, but I also look at that, and I'm glad, because I think that gave me a lot more confidence kind of going through, because I had experience to lean on to say I have alumni relations, I have Photoshop, I taught myself
Sure.
Photoshop sitting around so that I could do recruiting graphics and things like that you just kind of get forced to do along the way. But I think that's part of the fun.
Let's talk about recruiting a little bit and kind of how you'll approach this, because like you mentioned earlier, you have a great product to sell.
Mhm.
You've got a well-known, very respected elite academic school.
Yep.
And Is the footprint, I'm not real familiar with the student body. Is this a national recruiting play? Is
Mhm.
this regionalized, or like where geographically are the kids that you're going after, and kind of how are you approaching them?
Yeah, I mean, on our current roster, we have 6 different states, 3 different countries represented.
Wow.
As a school, we are heavily into the New York and
Right.
Mid Atlantic regions, but our second largest feeder state is California. We have a very wide stretch, again, both domestically and internationally. And so, that was the other thing that kind of excited me was both stops that I've had have been national recruiting. I've been able to pull kids from a lot of different
Sure.
areas, and so getting an opportunity to continue that. Now, obviously, it's a different place, right? And that's part of what I'm trying to figure out, especially with going through the early action timeline right now, and having a roster of 8 guys graduating out of our 13.
Yeah.
We've got a pretty big emphasis on needing to get guys, but it's been a lot of fun, and that's something that I felt very confident coming in is that I've gone through that right at two
Sure.
different way different types of schools. Maine Maritime being a very small school on the coast in Maine, having the maritime niche, but being able to pull kids from the DMV, from Florida,
Right.
from Texas, from California, and then obviously Carnegie Mellon, and that's a school that a lot of people think, well, yeah, of course it's easy, right? But national recruiting can be tough, and finding the kids that
Sure.
really fit, the culture of your school and that want what you offer. Um, you got to be able to make relationships quickly. You got to be able to know, the contacts in different areas. And so I'm excited. I mean, so far, we've been able to talk to kids all over the U.S. And even internationally as well. And so it's going to be fun. I think building a roster, just the way I see it, I think you need to have as many areas covered as possible. I think that's part of the experience for the kids in the locker room is not just having kids from the same area or the same state or whatever it is. I want to branch out. I want to have a lot of different areas covered. I'd love to get keep the international um, flavor going as well. Just because I think that's just it's part of the experience, right? It's
Sure.
why you go to a liberal arts school. It's why you go to the small environment of D3 is to be able to experience and meet a lot of different people.
I think I live in Dallas. I live in the city limits of Dallas, and I think that the DFW area is a great hotbed for D3 kids that's a little bit untapped. I mean,
Fantastic.
it really is. I mean, so that
We we
that's
spent
my
we
hot
spent a
take.
lot of time there. We spent
Yeah.
a lot of time there when I was at Maine Maritime. We have a huge alumni
Yeah.
population in Houston because of the oil and gas, and so we did a lot of work down there in Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, like just because you're right. There's a ton of talent.
Last year, Illinois Wesleyan was got connected with a kid that was playing at John Paul II High School in Plano, and I ended up going to a bunch of his
Mhm.
games and just kind of evaluating. And boy, I'm sitting at these games thinking that kid can play, that kid can play, that kid can play, that kid, that those. There's kids, and well, man, there's a lot of kids in the Dallas area, and it just
Well,
DFW in general. Let's
Well, and
talk a
that's
little.
some of the part of it is the education for the kids because in those areas there's not as many D3 schools. They're not exposed to as many D3 options, and so
Right.
I think where you're not see you are it's growing, right? But I think where you don't see as many coming out is just because there's in the
Right.
Northeast we don't have a ton of NAIAs, for example, right? And so
Exactly.
kids are going to lean more toward the Division 3, where in the South, in the Midwest,
Right.
it's just a different perception. And so there's a ton of talent. You just got to be able to get into the area and have a couple kids that can share that experience. And once you do, man, it is a pipeline that just keeps giving because there's a ton of
Right.
kids that can play that are looking for homes.
And I think you'd agree with me. This is like the what kids think of Division 3 in certain geographies makes a big difference. A
Yep.
couple months ago, I did a kind of a research project that probably took me an hour to do, which is I took all of the D3hoops.com All American teams. And I think there's like 25 of those now, going back to whatever year it
Mhm.
started. And I tried to, I determined where those kids came from, like what high
Mhm.
schools they came from. And like the highest total was from Illinois. And it made sense to me because like if you're a Chicago area kid, and like you at Carnegie Mellon, you guys had a great
Yep.
player from Illinois, right? From Stevenson High School,
I,
I believe.
Every year we were getting somebody from the Chicago area that
But
just
those kids
fantastic.
think, like, you would agree, I think, Dave, that like those kids, when a D3 school recruits them, they think that that's good basketball.
Yep.
And it's, I think, other parts of the country, like a kid in like in Dallas, let's say a
Mhm.
D3 school comes and they're like, D3. So it's different in different parts of the country is what I've found. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, and I think it's all because of exposure, right? It's not there's not a negative perception.
Right.
It's they haven't been exposed to as many D3 opportunities to really see the value and the level of
Exactly.
competition in the areas that have more D3 schools, but also have more D3 products, right? Kids that are going and making that choice and then sharing that experience.
Yeah,
You see it compound because now they're like, wait, he was really good and he went D3, right? Or man, he had
exactly.
a hell of a career. Like I want to follow that. But
Exactly.
when you don't see as many or have as many of those connections, you just don't think about it in the same way.
It is fascinating, and I do think that a lot of what's going on, I think Division 3 right now has a really strong brand. I think we're starting to break down some of those barriers in other places.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you before I let you go about the Liberty League. It's a great league, and it's a league where there's not one team that has like owned it for the last 5 years or something. I'm looking at last year, Ithaca won it. The year before it was RPI.
Mhm.
The year before COVID, it was RPI, and then Skidmore, and then Hobart. So, this again, some of these leagues you could come into, there is this just like juggernaut that you have to, it's almost like that old Wittenberg Worcester
Yep.
situation where like those two teams were such juggernauts.
Yeah.
So you got a great league. You're sitting here 3-0 tied with Hobart. Talk a little bit about what you know about your new conference you're in, the Liberty League, and some of the competition you're going to be facing here.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot. I knew, I was exposed and knew some of the programs, better than others before getting here. But that's been one of the benefits of having such an old group. I don't have to do the convincing and talking about these teams. And I mean, our
Right.
guys know them. They know the players, they know the coaches, they know the way the Liberty League schedule works. And so it's been nice for me to kind of lean on that, right? And get their input and their experience from it. But we're sitting at 3-0. We've been lucky. I felt like we were holding on for dear life. At 4 game stretch, we won by 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, and 4 points. And so we're finding ways to win, which is because of the experience and the amount of close games that these guys have played, especially over the last couple of years. But it's a wide open league. It's a really tough, really good league. And so we've been able to capitalize on the home court. If you want to make noise anywhere, you got to win it at home. And so, we've been able to take care of that. We talked about kind of that first 3 game stretch as kind of the first bubble, right? We
Right.
took care of that. Now we've got this rest and break and to prepare ourselves for the gauntlet that is the season coming up. And so, we just, I mean, here's the deal. We haven't done it, right? 18-19 was the last time that we made the Liberty League playoffs. And so for us, 3-0, yeah, I mean, I'd rather that than the opposite. But at the
Right.
same time, we got a long way to go. There's a lot of really tough teams. There's a lot of teams that are inexperienced that lost a lot coming out of last season. And so there's a lot of teams that are going to get a lot better the
Yeah.
more they play. There's a lot of freshmen or even just inexperienced guys that are being relied on. And so, we're happy with where we're at, but we also know we have a long way to go if we want to, make the playoffs and do something that hasn't been done in a couple years.
Yeah, I mean, I would think it'd be awfully cool to get into that conference tournament and make a run, right? I mean, how cool would it be to, play a game where, I can't remember if Liberty League is a Saturday or Sunday final, but playing a final game
Sunday,
where
yep,
it's one of those Sundays, right? Is
yep.
playing a game where if you win it, you're in the tournament. Like that'd be incredible based on where you guys have been. I also want to ask you about your upcoming schedule. So you've
Hmm.
got a couple weeks off now. You're in one of
Hmm.
these kind of tough long stretches where you hope your guys are doing all the
Yep,
right things and staying in shape because you go to Atlanta and
yep.
you're going to play Oglethorpe and Bellhaven in
Mhm.
Atlanta. So are these challenging stretches for coaches when you've got these long breaks and you're sitting there thinking, oh man, What are we going to look like when we tee it up against Oglethorpe?
I think if you talk to any coach, I'm not really sure what the situation is. We're always going to say it's tough, because it's tough not having them there and practicing, but
Right.
it's also tough when you practice, but you don't have a game coming up, and trying to stay focused and
Yeah.
competitive. And so, it's a challenge. And we just, we met with our captains today and just talked about that accountability factor of, hey, if we want to do what you're talking about doing, we need to find a way to maintain the momentum through the break. And I do think the break is important. I think getting a chance to step away from basketball a little bit, the grind of this
Yeah.
season, to recover mentally as well as physically, handle your finals, see some family. Like I think that's really important. But at the same time, it's a new year, right? Like this is kind of the end of the first stretch. Um, we have one day of practice, and we've got to hit the road down to Atlanta. And I don't have the luxury of saying, hey guys, we always fly. This is going to be the first flight that our guys have taken for
Wow.
games in their career, and so it's going to be an awesome experience. So I'm really excited, but it's going to be two really tough games. And so for us, it's, hey, let's stay accountable. Let's make sure we're progressing. We're doing what we need to do, but also let's enjoy the holidays. Let's enjoy the time off, and make sure we are ready when we hit the floor on the 27th to roll.
Well, we'll certainly be watching and certainly be rooting for you guys because it is an awesome story. And I hope that everyone kind of checks this out because, again, when you think about this, again, to go from 0 wins in 2019-20, 0 to 8 to 7 to now 7 wins at this point. It's just, it's a really cool thing. And you don't see turnarounds like that very often. So kudos to you. And I want to turn it over to you, Dave, as we start to close this thing out. Is there anything we didn't cover? And what do you want to leave to the Bard men's basketball fans, to D3 Hoops fans, anyone tuning into the QCast today?
Well, I think one of the things as you talk around, the turnaround and this, I mean, it's not the ability has been there, the learning experience has taken place, and I just happen to come in at the right time and get them energized a little bit, and they're buying in, and it's crazy what confidence can do, right? I think a lot of people talk about the physical side of training and sports and all of that, but watching some of our guys, I mean, really, it's confidence and and embracing a role. We talk a lot about efficiency, playing the strength, just playing the strength to maximize your best season. And if you have your best season, and that's not a selfish thing, right? It's understanding and being who you are and what you do really well, but also understanding and making sure that you share it. I'm going to do it. If I don't do something well, I'm going to let you do that, right? And so embracing that, buying into that, has us playing very confidently. And so I'm really proud of the guys. I'm excited that they let me join here for the ride. It's been a lot of fun, but we've got a long way to go. And the I think the only other thing I'd say to our point earlier is watch D3 hoops, man. There's a lot of talent at every level in every conference. There's a lot of players that can play, but it's not as easy as a lot of kids think to be able to play D3 basketball, and to be able to win at the college level. And so get out, watch it. I think you'll learn a lot when you do.
Very well said. And kudos to your guys. Again, I do think of those seniors that have had 3 coaches, and kudos to all of them for hanging in there and being open to playing a little different style this year. And
Mhm.
it's really happy for those guys to see this start. And kudos to you as well, Dave, for coming into kind of a tough situation and really getting these guys to hang with you and to stay with things. So awesome job. We'll be rooting for you guys. Next game again is December 29th. That's going to be in Atlanta against
Mhm.
Oglethorpe. Folks, this has been the QCast Season 4, Episode 19. This is Dave Sloan from Bard College. Dave, it's been great meeting you. It's been great talking hoops with you, and we're going to certainly be rooting for you guys, okay?
I appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Thanks, man.